I want to start with this Supreme Court decision because it's 9-0. Both of these two decisions in which we're interested today are 9-0. One was written by Ketanji Brown Jackson and one was written by Sotomayor. And you and I will like both of them. How about that? You know, the court is always saying most of their decisions, the vast majority, are actually unanimous. It's, you know, a small handful that wind up 5-4 and give the Supreme Court, you know, this controversial reputation and makes leftists say we have to delegitimize them and stack the court and all that stuff. But anyway, this is 9-0. It's Ames versus Ohio Department of Youth Services. And this was a so-called reverse discrimination case where a straight woman got effed over by her boss in favor of a gay woman who she said was less qualified. And when she sued over it, saying that's reverse discrimination, you can't discriminate against me because I'm straight. The courts in Ohio within the 6th district said, okay, you can file this claim, but you're going to be held to a higher standard of proof because you're straight. Because generally there's a presumption in the law that people don't discriminate against people who are part of the majority group. So you have to prove more than a gay person or a minority, a person of color, et cetera, would have to prove. You have to prove, for example, that there's a history of this employer discriminating against straight people. So like you have to show statistical, you know, proof that majority members continuously get discriminated against by this employer. And she said, that's bullshit. That's not fair either. Like that too is discriminatory against straight people. And 9-0, the high court agreed with her. And what this decision effectively does is lower the burden of proof that people in the so-called majority group, here it's a straight person, could also be a white person, could be men, et cetera, people who are not considered part of any protected class, now have to meet in order to bring what we used to just call reverse discrimination claims. This is great. Your thoughts?
It is fantastic, Megyn, and it does kind of makes you sit back and say, hey, there actually is sanity out there. This can still happen. I love this. And I will be honest with you, if you would have told me before this that it was going to be 9-0, I would have been shocked. I mean, it is true, as you point out, that there are a lot of 9-0 cases. There's several of them today, actually. And that does happen pretty often. This type of case, though, I wouldn't expect to be 9-0.
Right.
Maybe you get Kagan. Maybe. But I would have expected at least a 7-2 or 6-3 or 7-2 situation.
Sotomayor and Jackson.
Sotomayor.
Part of that. Jackson wrote the opinion.
It's legitimately shocking. And one of the things I really love about it is there's been this movement over the past 10, 20 years to take this idea of, to use a blanket sort of term to describe it, the color blindness aspect, right? This vision that we had going back to, MLK on race, but also for many other things, that sexual preference and other things, where we're just supposed to see people and judge them on their merit. This goes back to the founding of the country. And George Washington had a badge that he would award, and it was called the Merit Badge. And it was one of the founding principles. It was not a society built on these caste systems. That's not who we are as Americans. And there's been a push over the past 10, 20 years to really reverse that. And this push for equity instead of equality, this idea of equality of outcomes as opposed to equality of opportunity. And for a really long time, it seemed like we were going down a road that didn't end well. And while a lot of the opinion makers, you go listen to The View, they'll express this very stupidly on a day-to-day basis, but the law didn't change. That principle of colorblindness is still entrenched in the law. Our justices still recognize it, even crazy ones like Sonia Sotomayor. And that is really encouraging.
And you know what? It's great because there should be no presumption in today's day and age that majority group members would not be discriminated against. Given the lunatic left and their takeover of so many institutions, and, you get boycotted if you don't post the black square, and you've got to have your pride flag out there, or you're going to get some march in front of your business. You've got the Human Rights Council giving you grades on just how woke you are. Given all of that, there should not be a presumption that no employer really discriminates against people who are members of the so-called majority, white people or guys or straight people. Bullshit. That's what's been very much on trend and in favor, especially over the past 5, 10, 15 years. So while this opinion doesn't, base itself on that reality, it comes along at just the right time because majority members do not have some special preference from most employers. To the contrary.
Yeah. Look, there are entire industries where white dudes don't even bother to apply at this point.
That's right.
This is something that is really happening. And there was also, to acknowledge the obvious truth, times where, other races were discriminated against in really serious and terrible ways. We all know that's part of American history. The solution to that, to disagree with Ibram Kendi, is not more discrimination. The solution to past discrimination is not current discrimination, and the solution to current discrimination is not future discrimination. That's what the left really
Let me
tried.
say this. So Ibram X. Kendi can suck it because he thinks he's the ultimate authority because he's black and he considers himself an intellectual. Well, guess what? Clarence Thomas is also black and an intellectual. Ketanji Brown Jackson, same. She's on the U.S. Supreme Court. And they have both said Ibram X. Kendi is totally wrong. Let me read you part of the Thomas concurrence. Courts with this rule, because there was a split in the circuits, half were making majority plaintiffs, white people, et cetera, prove this extra stuff, and half were saying, no, they don't have to. So the U.S. Supreme Court really had to resolve this once and for all. And so Thomas said this: courts who follow this rule of making, majority plaintiffs prove more have enshrined into the anti-discrimination law an explicitly race-based preference. White plaintiffs must prove the existence of background circumstances, while non-white plaintiffs need not do so. He said that this decision obviates the need for courts to engage in the sordid business of dividing people by race or other protected traits. I mean, it is a final judgment on that Kendi nonsense from a court that includes 2 black members, one as conservative as they come and one as liberal as they come.
I love Clarence Thomas. If he's not the most important man in America, I don't know who is. He is just fantastic, and he's just so good on issues like this in particular. He just doesn't put up with it at all. He says "suck it" basically in his rulings, as you pointed out.
Yes, you had to read between the lines, but it's there.
It's there. It's there. We have this phrase that is kind of important to our country, that all men are created equal, and we've not lived up to that at every point in our history. But another part of that is implicit in this, because everyone focuses on equal in that phrase, and that's an important part of the phrase, of course, but also created is. It means that we all start on an equal ground. And what you do with your life is up to you. You are supposed to be able to make your own life as you go through it. You're created equal. It doesn't mean everything in life comes out equal. And what the left is trying to do is implement this sort of outcome equality, if you will, that honestly at this point doesn't even seem equal. Like they're trying to punish stuff that, I don't know, somebody's great-great-grandfather did that I had nothing to do with. I had nothing to do with slavery, Megyn. I promise you. I have no slaves on my plantation in my cul-de-sac. That's not something I'm engaging in, and nor would I want to. And thank you. And I will say, if you legalize slavery today, people would not want to engage in it because they know it's abhorrent. Right?
I think P. Diddy wants to engage in it. I beg to differ. I think Puff Daddy has been engaging in it for quite some time based on the testimony I'm hearing. But keep going.
You're 100% true on that, and I wish I had thought of that, but you're right. It does happen. And look, there are instances of this happening, sadly, across the country and across the world, frankly. Most of it's gone from here. But generally speaking, when we talk about high ideals, not the failures, but what we want out of a country, that is really where the disagreement is between the left and the right. We all recognize that there are failures, right? But at the end of the day, what we want, I think, on the right is people to be equal. That when you go up against, when your son or daughter tries to get into Harvard and they are Asian, they should have the same ability to get into the school based on whether their test scores are good and the things that they do and the things that they bring to the table. They shouldn't be demoted because their ancestry comes from another part of the world. That should be obvious. I thought it was obvious to all of us very recently, and that has faded away. But luckily the courts are there, and I do fear that the courts often recently are the only thing holding back a lot of these terrible policies. Certainly over this previous administration, it seemed like the only thing stopping the worst things from occurring in our society were the courts. Thank God they're there and doing the things that they are.
This administration is working very hard to try and fix this country. But while they're focused on fixing the country, they can't fix your personal finances. That's really up to you. And that's why thousands of Americans are turning to Birch Gold. In the past 12 months, the value of gold has risen by 30%. Think about that. How's your stock market investment doing? Has it gone up 30%? Have you made 30% on your money? And demand is strong and it's growing. While reports are that the BRICS nations are actively working to challenge the US dollar as the world's reserve currency, that's not great. In other uncertain times, gold has offered peace of mind, and in these uncertain times, it does the same. Birch Gold makes it incredibly easy to convert your existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA backed by physical gold. Or if you prefer, you can buy gold to store in your own home safe. Just text MK to the number 989898, and Birch Gold will send you a free info kit on gold. There's no obligation, only useful information. With an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau and tens of thousands of happy customers, take control of protecting your savings today. Text MK to the number 989898. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.